One. Hello and welcome back to Kenny the Sports Guys podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Severa, and today is episode 3 of Bench Talk. Joining me on the show is Mark Wolters from Wolter's World. Mark is one of the best travel experts around and has been to over 70 countries and 6 continents. His YouTube channel, Wolter's World, has gained over 800,000 subscribers. When he isn't traveling with his family, Wolters is a marketing professor, PhD at the University of Illinois. Please welcome to the show, Mark Wolters. Thank you for being on the show today, man.
Thanks, Kenny. I appreciate the invitation.
All right. I've been wanting to interview you for like a while now, and I actually bumped into you during the podcast movement.
Yeah, it was fun. We were down in Nashville, and then we started talking a bit. And I'm glad we could get together to talk about where travel and sports kind of cross over, because they can be a great experience if you're abroad. I mean, it's just a fantastic thing.
All right. So let me start with the first question. During your travels, have you visited any sports stadiums outside of the United States?
Oh, yeah. I've been all over. I became kind of a pseudo mascot for a basically Serie C, like C League team in Italy. Went to, I don't know, I've probably been about 15 games for the Vicenza Calcio, the Vicenza team. When I used to live in Berlin, I used to go to Hertha Berlin games all the time, more soccer games, lots of soccer stuff. It was fun going to like Borussia Dortmund, like the big time teams, but also going to some of the smaller teams like this Cottbus team, which is like, middle of nowhere town. They got promoted to the major leagues, like out of some kind of Hallmark movie kind of stuff. That was fun. Going to games in Brazil and Argentina. And I remember going to games. They're like, you can go to that game, but you're not allowed to go to that game because that's the derby, and you're going to get in trouble. So been to a lot of different games, going to ice hockey in Finland and basketball in Lithuania. So lots of different sports, a lot of different places.
Nice. Actually, I've been to one sports stadiums outside the United States. That was in Camp Nou. I didn't really go to a game. Actually, I actually had a tour of the facilities, and it's like one of the best stadiums I have ever been to. Outside
they have a great stadium tour there with all the trophies and the stories and everything. We didn't get to go to a game, but we got to go through the tour with our kids, and like everybody loved it. Like they do a really good job.
Nice. So I guess the second question I have is, what is the experience like in other stadiums that you have visited outside of the United States?
So, first we got to preface, like in the US, it's like a whole experience, right? They've got like the fan experience, they've got the food experience, they've got, there's a game going on as well. So it's almost like you can enjoy the whole experience without watching the game. But pretty much everywhere else I've gone in the world, going to the game meant you're only going to the game. So like in Italy, there was no beer sales. Like you could get these little like coffee shots, and that was about it. But it was, and like food, there's like, we got some, potato chips. Like there's no, I kept, as a marketing professor, I'm like, you have so many revenue streams you're missing out on. People want to eat, people want to drink. So that was one thing I noticed was different. A lot fewer options for food, a lot fewer options for alcohol. Some places no alcohol was allowed. I took a group of students to a soccer match in Denmark, and they actually had alcohol there. I mean, it was like Carlsberg Stadium or something. Like, so it was like, okay, yeah, they're gonna have beer because that's the sponsor. So someplace you could have it, but it was really limited. Like, you got popcorn and hot dogs. It's kind of like what I imagine going to games like in the 1920s and 30s were in the US, where it's like, we got popcorn, peanuts, cold beer. That was about it. But it's a very different experience because some places do have I wouldn't say it's tailgating, but you might, like when I went to games in Italy, we'd all go to a restaurant before the game that were fans. We'd have kind of like a pre-party, then we'd go to the game. Or my favorite times were when we would take the buses like 6 or 7 hours to a game, and there was one time we went, it was a 7-hour bus ride down. We ended up getting a police escort the last part because our team and another team were not very friendly. And so when we got there, the mayor of the town banned the fans from our bus from going into the stadium.
Really?
So we had to sit outside the stadium, like with the cops all around us. The cops were videoing us and who's all there and stuff. It was really weird. And I'm like, all right. But that was funny because that was like kind of a rival team, but they're so far away, didn't have much. The funniest was we went to, I think it was in Brescia. It was one of these like, hey, my friend's wife's like, don't get arrested. when you go, because it's one of those. And I remember we were getting off the bus, the cops are right there when you're walking off the bus, and they're patting everybody down. And the guy stops me, pats me down, and then like feels my belly and underneath my my coat. And he's like, "Oh, grasso, solo grasso." He's like, "Oh, you're fat. You're just fat. It's okay." I'm like, "Thanks. Yeah, no weapons, just fatness." So it was a different kind of vibe. I do feel that the passion for the sports outside the US seem to be much more like focused passion. So in the US, we have tons of different sports people can get behind, but like in a lot of countries, like in Lithuania, it's just basketball. Like that's what the people are insane about basketball.
They actually
But, like,
know
Italy,
that too.
yeah. So it's a different vibe. So you get like true passion, like crazy passion sometimes when you go to games there, as opposed to, oh, it's just a family event. We're going to go to a game because we're in town. So
So how is the atmosphere out there?
the atmosphere was always good. It was more electric. I mean, going to a Cardinals Pirates game in July, not really exciting, but going to like some of these other sports was like, no, this is the whole town has been waiting for this game, and all the stuff here. It definitely seemed a lot more like, how to see it, a lot more intense, not intense, but like more important, more impactful. Like people are more bought in. So that was kind of interesting.
I know I hate to ask this, but there are a lot of good stadiums out there. But what do you think is the worst stadium that you ever been to?
The worst stadium I've been to. Like I said, the worst seats I've had. There's two worst seats I've had. One was when we were kids. We used to go to the old Busch Stadium in St. Louis, and my parents would always get like upper deck seats because they were cheap, and we'd always be like in the sun. So it's like middle of July, St. Louis, 100% humidity, 105 degrees, sun beating down on you, just like, kill me now. And I had poison ivy at the time. Oh God, it was just, that was the most miserable experience. And that stadium wasn't very good. But I think to like stadiums I went to around the world, there's some, like I was in one in Portugal. I think it was the Sporting Stadium. I went to a bunch of games there when I was in Lisbon, and the stadium is fine, but it's when you exit out, I remember going, people are gonna die. Like, do they not have like safety procedures? Because it's kind of like all the things exited out, but then there was like not a moat, but there's like a drop off on the other side, so you had to then go around the stadium. Mm-hmm. So if anything happened, you really couldn't get more than like like 20 meters away from the wall of the stadium. I'm like, that's a safety thing I'm kind of worried about. Let's see. Then I mean, if you go to like some of the like lower level teams, it's like I've seen high school stadiums that were better. But I can't think of. I mean, nothing's too horrible. It's just nothing's like, oh my gosh. But it was. There was some. I'm like, oh hey, it's like I'm at a junior high stadium. So.
Well, for me, I've been to a number of MLB stadiums so far, like 7 or 8, and growing. Oh, cool. But I think the worst stadium, I don't really have one, but I would have to say the new Yankee Stadium, actually, believe it or not. Because
it has no spirit. It has no spirit
exactly.
At all.
It has no spirit, one. It just feels like it's not catered to the fans anymore.
I know. And it's funny because I remember I went to the old Yankee Stadium. Mm-hmm. It's like, I feel like the designers for the new Yankee Stadium were from that 80s and 90s era when it was like, we're just going to make a big stadium and we're going to put whatever sport goes in it. So you had like the Astrodome, which was horrible for football and it was horrible for baseball, and they both had to play there. You're like, this isn't good. It's like the old Busch Stadium. It wasn't made for anything really good. It was just a stadium. And yeah, Yankee Stadium now, you're like, old Yankee Stadium was you used to like go to Fenway, go to Wrigley. You'd go there even if there wasn't a game. And now I'm like, nah.
It's weird. Like I used to go to a lot of games at Yankee Stadium, but I don't really go anymore. I prefer Citi Field actually. Citi Field was actually much more catered to the fans.
I know, and that's what's funny. I'm like, especially how baseball is now, where it's much more a regional thing. Like you need to get those people wanting to come back, and you're going to make they buy the ticket, but then you need them to want to stay. You need them to want to eat there. You want them to be there. So they're just putting more money in your pocket, because that's where, again, the marketing professor in me is like, we got to get as much money from them as we can while they're here, because they're going to buy their t-shirts outside, for $10 versus the $65, official Yankee jersey, you know.
All right, switching subjects. What are the best stadiums you've ever been to?
Best stadiums I've been to. I think the best fan experience I had. I'm not a Cubs fan at all,
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
but the first time I went to Wrigley was the first time. Well, the first time I went to Wrigley with my son, my oldest son, when he was his first baseball game. He was like 3. He had just cracked his head open, so like he had a Band-Aid scar, you know, like still had like the blood stuff on here because he'd cracked his head open in Portugal, and then we flew back to the U.S. for the summer like 3 days later. And so it was still like all, and we come in and we got bleacher seats. And I didn't realize bleacher seats like, yeah, just find where you can find a seat. And we're like, we got him. It's his first game. We're like, first game, you need to go down in case there's a home run. And so we ended up going like second row of the stadium in the bleachers. Everybody's like, can I get a picture with him? So everyone's like picking him up to get a picture with him. You know, like first kid of this first Cubs game. Like, so we're just passing him around and just had a really great time. Like that was a really great experience for first game for him. But that was like my favorite kind of experience. The stadium itself isn't very comfortable to go to the bathroom in, but I kind of like the more traditional ones because I've been to a few. We just went to a Green Bay Packers game, and for that was fun, not for the stadium itself, but just for the atmosphere outside because it was more like a college game beforehand with all the tailgating and stuff. So that was fun. I did like. We went to a University of Georgia football game last year, no, pre 2019. And that was another one of the fun ones that the whole city is all done up. And then you kind of just walk into the stadium. The stadium's like in a hill. So instead of having to go up like 9 sets of stairs, it's like, oh, you walk in, you're like, oh, we're right there. So that was nice. What are some other good ones? I don't know. I haven't liked the Allianz Stadium in Munich. I haven't been to that one. I don't know, the European soccer stadiums, I know they have it, you're more tight in, so that's kind of cool because it's really set for the pitch. But like my back doesn't like them. I knew every time I went to a European soccer match, not all of them, but like in the older stadiums, like in Berlin, they did in the old Olympic Stadium, and they've retrofitted it now. But back in the day, it was like the bench seating, and after I like, oh dude, my back. So if you go to, they still have that if you go to like Lambeau Field, you can rent actually the seats you can sit on instead of just the bench, which I recommend.
So I think for me, the best stadium I ever been to is actually Wrigley, but that's for historical purposes.
Yeah.
But for now, good. Have you ever been to Petco Park?
I've seen it from outside. I have not been in it, but I remember I was at a hotel, and my window from my hotel room looked into it. I'm like, dang, that's a nice stadium.
No, I actually been inside there actually in last June actually, and it's very, very beautiful.
Nice.
I know. So speaking of Green Bay, you've been to a Green Bay Packers game, and you elaborated earlier that you actually, experienced a lot of stuff in there. So what would you say about your experience attending that game?
Well, so we went, and a friend of ours, he plays for the Washington football team. So my wife, and then his wife, and then her mom, who's our friend, like they were all in their Washington jerseys, and everybody was super nice to us, even though they had Washington jerseys on. I was neutral because I'm a Cowboys fan, so I was just neutral there. But like everyone was super nice with us, being there. It was really cool, and people were very friendly everywhere we went. What was cool though is like they have certain songs like Roll the Barrel or something, like everybody sings along with the song at a certain time, and everyone does a certain dance, and that was kind of fun. I was sad that they didn't have any beer sales like in the stands. You always had to go in and get it. There's no food sales in the stands. Everything was cash free, so it's all by credit card, which I feel bad because like the vendors, a lot of them make a lot of their money off the tips, and there's no tips. Like people using credit card instead of, the beer's an $8.50 beer, here's $10, keep it. Now it's $8.50, just sign and walk away. And that $1.50 that would have gone to them is more likely not going to them. So that was kind of an interesting thing, but the overall experience was really great. People were very friendly. Only one guy was kind of a jerk in front of us. But the thing was, it was because my wife and our friends who were like, they're like, go Jonathan, because that's literally her husband, and the guy's like being a total jerk. He's like, oh, I know personally, and the guy's all the Green Bay fans around us like, dude, you're a jerk. Shut up. Like it was like that's his wife, man. Like and it was cool is the ushers like, oh, you want to get a picture? So they got to go down to like right on the edge, and he came and they got a nice little kiss and everything, and they got the pictures, and everyone was super nice about it, except for that one guy. But everybody else was a total jerk to that guy for being such a jerk. So that was a pretty good experience. But I will say, don't expect that if you're a Bears fan and you go to Green Bay, they don't like.
Oh, you get killed over there.
Yeah, that is the only time it's like, no, man, I don't go. Because we did a video on the don'ts of going to Lambeau Field and do a game, and I'm like, yeah, they're great. And one of them is like, don't worry, they're really friendly with visiting teams. But I have a little no, unless you're a Chicago Bears fan, then don't.
Or a Minnesota Vikings fan.
Yeah, that one too. But that one actually, Wisconsin has a lot of Minnesota Viking fans in the
Really?
state.
Really?
If you're near the border of Minnesota up that way, but was funny, but they all hate Chicago.
Well, they did lose last night, so
Yeah.
the Bears lost to the Packers last night, so
Yeah,
it was very
that's all right.
interesting.
Yeah.
What was it like seeing Aaron Rodgers close? Because Aaron Rodgers is one of my favorite players, and
It was like it was interesting. I've gone to games. I mean, I was going to like the greatest show on turf games in St. Louis back in the day.
classic.
They're the fun times. But like you can tell. I mean, when you watch him play, like that dude's good. Like it's weird. Like you see it on TV, and they always have the good angles. But when you watch him in real life, like you can really see that he knows what he's doing. And we were pretty close. We were like in the 15th, 20th row back, so we could actually see down there. And it was funny. My friend's husband sacked him that day. It's like I think he had 2 sacks, so it was a good day for him. So he got to see him up close and personal. But no, I mean you could really tell that he knew what he was doing, and then the other quarterback was trying real hard, but it wasn't the same. Like you could really feel and see the level.
Taylor Heineke.
How he held himself. So
yeah, Taylor Heineke is not a good quarterback at all. Like he didn't do well actually yesterday. He was terrible.
Yeah.
So is it really like the frozen tundra? Was it really freezing that day? Because I heard
so when we were there, it was unseasonably warm.
Really?
So we only had jeans, t-shirt, quarter zip, and winter coat on.
That's the life right there. Because I would thought it would be freezing over there right now because they call Lambeau Field the frozen tundra.
Yeah, well, it does get like. So I was talking to some of the people when I was there. And that was cool. Everyone was sharing their stories, telling us like they're like, you can wear shorts to the game like through September. That you might get lucky. Then it's like October is when it can be hit and miss. So we went in October, and it was probably like in the 40s for the game, so it wasn't too bad. I could see if it was at night, it'd be pretty chilly. But they were telling me like, no, there's coats that have heaters built inside of it, so you can watch the game. Really? And like stay warm and stuff. Like, oh yeah, and you have like your gloves. Like everyone has their whole kind of kit for when it's going to be a frozen tundra game. But yeah, I mean, we were never warm. Let's put it that way. Like my winter coat stayed up and zipped up the whole time.
Awesome. Nobody likes hypothermia.
No.
Do you have any tips on people who want to travel to Green Bay for a game?
So one thing is you got to buy your tickets ahead of time and get your hotels as early as possible. Because in April, they're going to release the schedule for the next NFL season. Once they release it, I mean, get the hotel before you get the tickets. Otherwise, you might be either one, like we ended up finding out we got tickets like 2 weeks before because they're like, hey, you want to go to the game with us? We got a couple extra tickets. We're like, sure. And we ended up staying at pretty much a dump, but it was like the only dump that was available. So you might have to stay out of town, which can be annoying. So I would say book your hotel right away. Your tickets, and know that if you're in the lower bowl, wherever you are, it's all bench seating. So you can rent a little like cushion and with a back on to help you out. That's helpful. Food wise, don't look for any like now a lot of stadiums have like healthy food and healthy options. Don't expect that. Mac and cheese curds, brats. Like they do have. What's interesting is they actually do have some like gas station kiosk kind of things where it's like you can go through and buy your I don't know Cheez-Its, but it was like almost like a mini mart. You can get stuff there, and they had barbecue and things. But it is definitely Minnesota, so you're gonna have a lot of Minnesota treats when you're there.
And finally, are there any other stadiums that you want to visit?
So I would like to go. So I've been to the Americana in Rio. I've been outside, but I've never gone to a game inside. I would like to do that. One thing I really like to do is not necessarily a stadium. I'd like to go and see a final, like a World Cup final, a European Cup final, a CONCACAF final, something. Because we were in Paris in 2019 when the U.S. women's team was in the World Cup, and there was a chance for us to get like semifinal tickets. So my son and I could go because we were watching, because we were traveling Europe at the time, and so we had been watching all the games, getting all excited for the U.S. team. And it was like, oh, we get the tickets, and we looked online. It was something like $1,000 a pop, and
Yikes.
I'm like, I can't. I just couldn't. I'm like,
$1,000.
I was like, if it was the final, okay, I guess I can, like, maybe. But I was like, no, it was too much out of our price range. And I was like, dang it. But that's one thing I'd like to go see.
All right, so let's talk about travel, since you're like the travel expert around here. So how did Wolter's World came about?
So I started making these videos. I started making YouTube videos for like my wife, because she was going to be coming to move to Portugal to be with me. I was living there at the time, and I was making them for my students because a lot of them weren't native speakers. So I was helping them with some business topics. But the Wolters World videos, like the 5 Love and Hates, the culture shocks you have, the do's and don'ts of travel, that started because I was in Italy and I bought a guidebook, and the guidebook made the crappiest towns possible sound fantastic. And I had this guidebook, and I went to one of the towns, and it was like the palazzo was a parking lot now, and the castle was closed, the museum had nothing. It was just like reading the guidebook, it was like, did I have the right town? Because it was so off. And then I started looking more at blogs and seeing things. I'm like, man, a lot of these people are just writing nice things because they got free stuff, or they don't want to say anything mean or bad, which I can understand. But I was like, that's not right. Because then I thought of like my friends, because I was in my 20s at the time, and I was thinking of my friends, who had maybe 10 days of vacation a year. I'm like, wait, if you take your once in a lifetime trip to Europe and you go to some town because some blogger or some writer like got paid off to say something nice about a town, that's not right. Because then 10%, 20% of your vacation is wasted because someone got a free beer. That's not right.
That's not right.
Yeah, no. So from that moment on, I focus on honest travel advice. So I'll tell the good and the bad, so people are more prepared. So then you can travel and enjoy it. Because some things that people get really upset about, if you just know about beforehand, you're okay with it. It's like, hey, and like I always use this example, paying for the bread and butter. You have to pay for the bread and the butter in Lisbon. And people get really mad if they don't know that. But if they know beforehand, they're like, no, I'm okay. I don't need any bread. Haha. So it goes from like something that makes them really mad to like, haha, I do that cultural difference.
Well,
so
you could say that also using the bathroom in Italy, because you have to pay to use the bathroom.
Exactly. And like in Germany, there's like the toilet women who are like outside that give you the look, and you're like, they're like, well, you don't have to pay them. Like, yes, you do. They keep it clean. That's why the bathrooms are clean,
Exactly.
And it's like my mom and I, when we go traveling together, she always has a handful of coins in her pocket, because she doesn't know if she needs a €2 coin, a €1 coin, a 50-cent coin. She has like multiple coins. So when she goes to the bathroom, she can pay for whatever she needs. And it's funny because sometimes Europeans will get mad, like, we don't all make them pay. I'm like, no, you don't. But the place where tourists go, it does happen. So it's good to be prepared,
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, when I went to Italy, I was inside a mall, actually, and I had to use the bathroom. And I went straight to the bathroom, and then there was this old Italian lady. And I was wondering, like, why is she here? Like, she was looking at me very, very weird. And then like when I came out of the bathroom, she was like, this. And I started myself, do I have to pay this lady to use the bathroom? Because I didn't know at the time that you have to pay to, use the bathroom in like certain European countries. Mm-hmm. And it was something that actually was a little bit of a culture shock to me, because I'm not used to it here in America. Yeah. And it was actually a very interesting experience.
Oh yeah, and that's one thing a lot of people don't know. So our old travel videos, we had a bunch that really, we just started talking about like the bathroom. Like I have a video that I filmed years ago that I just found on a old hard drive, and it's like what you should know for your first time in Europe. And number one was talking about paying for the toilets. And it was like I found it like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, oh, I gotta put this one out. I'm like probably like 30, 40 pounds lighter, and like there's no gray in the beard or that. And I was still baldish, but it's like, it's obvious it's from years ago. Like, no, I have to put this one out. It's too good. It's too good.
You still look the same though.
Oh, I thank you.
You obviously have been around the world with your family. Can you name me your top 5 places you ever been to?
So my top 5 favorite places, if we go country-wise, we've got Brazil, we've got Rwanda, we've got Italy, we've got France, and what would be number 5? Actually, I love travel around the US too. So those are my top 5 countries.
Oh, nice. I mean, I've been to Cuba as well. Cuba is one of my favorites places to travel.
Yeah, that's
Ghana,
we were
especially.
yeah, my wife and I were looking to go there. We just were talking about it, but they're still closed down, so you can't go in.
Yeah,
So that's
it's
where
sad, but
yeah, that's because we were gonna go with the kids, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, and then the rules changed, then we couldn't do the kid, and we're like, and so we pushed it back, and now it's been then that COVID thing happened. So then I got
yeah.
pushed back
I actually
even
got
more.
lucky because I actually went on a cruise that actually led into Havana, and
Oh,
I was
nice.
way back in 2018, I think.
Oh,
And it
cool.
was actually a very, very interesting experience. So I would put
Nice.
Havana first. Naples, Italy. I love Naples.
Oh,
Really, really
cool.
nice place. Then Rome. Then London. London, I've been there a couple of years ago. Really, really nice city.
Oh, yeah.
And the final one that you have the tie between Paris and Nice.
Cool. Yeah, those are good places, man. Those are good
I,
places.
yeah, I hope to travel more often because I like to travel a lot when I get the
Yeah.
chance and stuff. All right, so the next question is, what is the most shocking thing that you have seen while traveling? I know. I'm sorry for the off topic
Well,
questions.
I have to figure out how to which ones I can actually say on a podcast.
No,
I've
you can
seen
say
some
you can say it.
things.
You
I'm
can say
like,
it.
I'm all right. I think I'll do this one. This is one that my son and I experienced together, and we never spoke about it, but we both experienced it at the same time. So many years ago, I was teaching in Beijing,
Mhm.
and one afternoon we went to the Forbidden City, and we're waiting in line, and it's like the hottest summer and hottest, like 100 and some degrees. People are everywhere. There's no shade, no nothing. So everyone's just like so hot, so miserable. And so I take my son, who was probably 6 at the time, 7 at the time. We and I are walking around trying to find a place to buy water, buy anything to get some liquids in us. And we look, and we're looking around, and then all of a sudden the crowd separates, and we see a trash can. Well, it's a metal. It's like if you watch the old '80s movie, like the homeless guys with the fire,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
the metal can, the barrel. Yeah, there's one of those there, and there's a dad holding this kid up, spread leg, and the kid goes poop. But the thing was, it's imagine that the people spread out of the way. Dad goes, this kid's poop, and I'm not joking you, it was Cheetos orange.
Really?
Like it glowed in the daylight, and my kid and I both were like,
Wow.
we just kind of like we both looked at each other, and then we just walked back, and then my wife's like, what happened? We're like, nothing at all. And I still remember that, and to this day we'll be like, what the heck did that kid eat? Because I mean, it was
Wow.
literally like bright orange, like Nike super duper glow orange. Like the kid could like keep people safe on construction site orange. Like that was the most shocking thing we saw, because it was just broad daylight, boom, right there.
Wow.
That
For
was
me,
that was something.
wow. For me, actually, well, I don't really have any shocking thing, but when I went to Barcelona a couple of years ago, I stumbled upon like a sorry, I stumbled upon like a nude beach.
Yeah.
It said they're very, very big over there, the nude beach,
Mhm.
and it kind of, I would say, kind of weirded out because I never witnessed that there.
Yeah.
I never witnessed that here in the United States. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, why is everybody's private parts hanging out and stuff like that? But it was
You
actually
missed the sign.
yeah. So that would be my most shocking moment in traveling. So the next
Yeah.
question I would have is, what are some of the places that you haven't been but would love to travel to?
So this is one. It's easy because it's basically 2020 was our year. We were going to hit up the places we really wanted to go,
Hmm.
and so obviously all that got canceled. So the ones that are like the big ones I really want to see: Egypt, Israel, Bhutan. Those are the 3 big ones, and then New Zealand. So those are the
New
4 we had
Zealand.
kind of set up. We were looking to go to in 2020, and poof.
Well, that's how the universe works.
I know. So we're trying to figure out how to get back to that, but I'm waiting for some of those ones. I'm waiting until things are more calmed down with COVID and all this stuff, because another resurgence of something, things get closed down again. I think for 2022, we're going to be more going to places that were open in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if they're open 21, they'll probably open in 22, so we can plan that way. So hopefully maybe 2023 we'll get to those places.
So for me, I'll have be number one, New Zealand. Number two, Japan. I would love to go to Japan one day. And number three, like, it's shocking to people, but Singapore.
I know a lot of people that really like Singapore.
I think Singapore is one of those underrated countries that people don't really know about because it's such a city state, just a small state. Yeah. And that's like one of the countries I really want to go to one day.
Yeah, no, I have a bunch of students that have studied there and they all loved it. They all love Singapore.
All right, so I have a couple more questions. Given that COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we traveled, what are some of the changes that you have noticed while traveling abroad?
Well, I've seen that people are talking less to each other, and that's not just like in travel, that's everything. Like people got more introverted and it's harder to get people to talk. Mm-hmm. I know for my teaching, like it took me 3 weeks to get my students to actually like answer questions in class. So like people need that time to get back. However, I will say there's one positive that COVID has done for travelers, because people are always wondering, well, how do I talk to locals? Well, now you always have something to talk about. What did you do during the pandemic? What did you do during COVID? And you can talk to them like, you know, like in the US, people talked about Tiger King and stuff last year, right? And so, yeah. You know, you find something that's there like, oh, where were you? Oh, we were locked down for 6 months. Oh, what did you do? How did you not go crazy? It gives you something to talk about that can bind us together to find some kind of connection. So in a way, that's a good thing. I mean, I'm looking for the positive sides here. So it gives you a way to talk about things. Another thing is like the vaccine, like your vaccination cards and all that stuff. I think that's something you're going to see probably for the next year or so, where it's going to be like, hey, you know, do you have your vaccination card, or do you have like testing to go to a country or something? I think that'll keep going for a little while. But yeah, I think, but the thing is a lot of the sites are still there. And so that's good. But one of the things I have seen is actually the mom and pop restaurants, which make up a great deal of the experience of going to a lot of countries, actually didn't make it through. So that's sad. And a lot of the smaller, like historical museums went out of business too. So that's what's sad. It's like, the Louvre's still there. The Louvre's fine. The Musée d'Orsay is there. The Met's still there. But if you wanted to see that local history museum or that local children's museum, those are the ones that really got hit the hardest, and they're the ones that went out of business. So that's why we did a bunch of stuff to try to get people to, you know, travel local and support their local tourism industries, because they're hurting the most. So,
oh man, that's so sad. But do you think that we will ever return back to pre-COVID travel?
Oh yeah, well the numbers for travel, we're getting close to getting back to there. I think we will. I think what's going to take is when more places open up, because even now there's places you can't go. Like we can't go to, but you know, it's like we were looking at places to go to next year, and you know, there's like Delta Airlines, like, oh, we've got like 6 places you can go, we'll fly to in the Caribbean. I'm like, did you used to have like 12 or 15? You know, there's only, because that's the only ones that are letting people in. So I think things have to open up more, and people need to feel more comfortable. I think people do feel more comfortable. Like you do see like the national parks were packed this year, you know, and they were even packed towards the end of 2020. And you're still seeing a lot more outdoor stuff. But I think getting back where it's like, oh, we're going to go to Europe for the summer. That's maybe 2023, 2024, when people are really feeling like, oh, that's got a viable travel option. Because though people went to Europe this summer, it wasn't from the US, it wasn't like it was before. And then you have to look at going to Asia and South America, those ones, and it's going to take time. And I think what we'll see is people will be going back to like the old standbys first. So like the Parises and the Londons. So if you decide to go to a secondary place like a Bordeaux or a Strasbourg, in France, you're going to have a better chance to get a better experience with less tourists, because the international tourists are going to go back to the, I miss London, I miss Paris, I want to go back, versus I want to explore some new stuff. So
nice. Because I was thinking of traveling next year, but I don't know where. But yeah, it should be. I should figure out eventually. So last 2 questions. Do you have any projects that you have in the works that you want to share?
Yes. So if you're thinking about doing travel planning and you're not sure where to begin, we just came out with a new travel planning 101 course If you go to brighttrip.com/woltersworld, you can look on there. Just go to brighttrip.com, look up travel planning. My wife and I have a 20 video series that goes over all the basics from how to choose a destination to what are the different hotel options, how to book a plane tickets, all kinds of things, how to be safe when you travel. So we have that. That's a brand that just came out last week. So we have that. Or if you want, you can always join us on our usual travel channels at Wolters World. We're there, always giving out honest travel advice to help people travel the world back.
Nice. So if you ever need travel advice, Mark Wolters is the man for that.
Thanks, Kenny. I appreciate it, my friend.
All right, so that's all the questions I have, and I want to thank you for being on the show today.
All right, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right,
have a good one.
Hold on. Well, that is the end of this episode. A special thank you to Mark Wolters for Wolters World for being on the show. Mark is one of the most foremost experts in traveling, and you can find him on YouTube. Just search Wolters World. In addition, you can find him on Twitter at Wolters World and on Instagram at Wolters World. Check out his website, woltersworld.com. For the full audio episodes and future episodes, head on over to kenthesportsguy.com, Ken with 2 N's. This episode is also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon Music. Until the next episode, see ya, and I hope you stay safe and healthy.